Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And today I'm speaking with Edwin Dande, the CEO of Cytonn. Edwin, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. And thanks for making the time.
Thanks for making the time also. Always good when we host you here at Cytonn, and let's take it away.
Thank you. Edwin, lots of news coming out. The big news which caught my attention was Taaleri possibly underwriting up to 20% of a share issue by yourselves. I remember meeting them, and they've had a tremendous commitment to your business since, I think, day one.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that relationship and what does it mean to you as a business?
Taaleri has been, I would say, the most important institutional investment relationship we've had. Started off with 1.5 billion commitment directly into real estate investments. Alma, C2, Amara Ridge, grew that investment to 5 billion Kenya shillings. Now remember, that investment has been going into the development themselves. It's now reached a point, as we were thinking about, now it's time to bring equity into the firm. They said, we have been with you since day one. When you had zero balance sheet, you only 4 employees. You've grown the balance sheet.
Is that how long they've been with you from the startup point?
They've been with us from the startup point.
It's an incredible journey, really.
Certainly. So then they said, now that you are thinking of doing raising equity through an IPO or placing an equity stake in someone's hand, we want to participate in that story. So it's essentially evolving the relationship from just a debt financier to become, for lack of a better word, jumping into bed together so that they are also investors into the firm.
And an anchor shareholder.
And an anchor shareholder.
Yeah. Just tell us a little bit about Taaleri, because I think to some people, they hear the name, they're wondering, it's Scandinavian?
It's Finnish.
Finnish?
Yeah. Taaleri is a Finnish investor. They manage roughly 7 billion US dollars. I think that's like 700 billion Kenya shillings. They run many funds, and one of the funds they run is an Africa real estate fund that is invested in Kenya, is invested in Rwanda, Mozambique, and some other countries that I don't have offhand. And essentially behind those funds are investors, mainly pension investors who are looking for a better return than they would get in Europe. So essentially, it's a company in Finland, manages 7 billion US dollars, has a variety of funds, and one of them is a fund that looks for returns in East African region on behalf of their pensioners.
So this is quite a statement, really, that we should be taking away, a statement of support from such a big institution, that's seen you grow from being a little chick to a chicken now.
Absolutely, it's a good statement and a bold statement that they see, because obviously they are not doing it for just the love of Cytonn.
You must have given them some handsome returns.
Yeah, they're looking for returns. For me, the only, what I would say, the only negative cloud is to see a foreign fund manager come into this country, back a local team, get very attractive returns for their pensioners. And yet, I think if you saw in the Business Daily the other day, they were talking about how pension fund returns have essentially been mediocre. So the average Kenyan pensioner is getting around 8 to 9%. We are delivering to the Finnish pensioner around 18 to 20%. So you sit and wonder, this doesn't make sense.
But and what is your explanation for that, Edwin?
That's why they call us a third world country. even opportunities that are right by our doorstep, we don't see it. We wait for other people to come from other countries, and it's not like the fund, the company is run by Finnish management. It's local management. So it's local management delivering above average return to Finnish pensioners, as we deliver 8 to 7% to the Kenyan pensioner. It doesn't make sense.
That's incredible when you think about it.
So it is the only aspect of the Taaleri relationship that sometimes make me wonder, we need to get our game together.
You would have thought pension funds would be knocking on your door saying, I've got to deliver returns similar to these folks.
So slowly by slowly, if you see the other day, we now went directly to pension trustees. And
I saw that you were presenting, and alternative investments, I think, was the title of the presentation.
And trying to show them that you can get a bit, because also as a local fund manager, it kind of also doesn't look good that we've not been able to attract serious pension fund investors into this project. But it's going to happen. These things take time. Yeah.
So, this is quite a dynamic change to the balance sheet. I mean, there have been issues swirling around about the level of debt that's been on the balance sheet. Does this, in your opinion, completely reshape Cytonn's balance sheet?
It certainly reshapes in two fundamental ways, even before we go into the equity story. Remember, in terms of debt, a lot of our debt is short-term debt. In June, Taaleri put in 2.1 billion of longer-term debt, 2 to 3 year money. So that already helped our balance sheet in terms of terming out or extending the tenure of the debt on the balance sheet. Now, coming in and then committing to 20% of the equity, depending on whatever price we end up with, of course, that also brings in equity into the story. So definitely, it stabilizes the firm. It has more long-term funding for the project, and that's a good thing to have. Having said that, remember, while it looks like on one side we have short-term funds funding long-term real estate,
yes,
the one thing people never analyze is to analyze all through. While you see brick and mortar real estate, behind that are sales agreements that are paying monthly, quarterly. So it's not as illiquid or as long-term as it looks to the naked eye. If you analyze what you see, for example, in Alma.
So you're taking partial payments is what you're meaning?
You're taking partial payment over the period of the construction. So if you take Alma Phase 1, you will see 250 apartments. Now remember, these apartments are 80% pre-sold as we speak. So in reality, there are only 50 apartments. The other 200 are sale agreements that are paying. So you are seeing brick and mortar apartments, but really it is sale agreements, financial contracts that are supporting this short-term debt.
So it's not such a big mismatch because of the nature of those contracts that you've already executed?
Yeah, if you look through the underlying, it is not such a big mismatch. But of course, it's very hard to explain that to someone because they'll say, I can see your real estate, it is long-term. I can see your funding, it's short-term. What they can't see is the sale agreements behind that real estate.
And just to touch on that, there has been some concern about the state of the real estate market. How does it look to you, Edwin? Because, I saw today cement sales down quite dramatically. You can't turn left or right with people expressing, some concerns. From where you're sitting, and I live quite close to one of your developments, and I must say, it's obviously doing great guns. Tell us from where you're sitting, what's your perspective on the market, and what differentiates you from everybody else?
The market is obviously soft. Based on the interest rate cap, there isn't so much money moving around in terms of buyers getting access to funding. The economy sentiment is down, so real estate is not doing well. There's a slump. However, I always remind people that our biggest differentiation in the market in real estate is our market research. It looks like we are doing a lot of things, but if you go look at today, Cytonn real estate, where there's development going on, it is either in Karen or in Kiambu County. In Karen, we are not really betting on real estate. We are betting in a market that has the highest concentration of high-end schools anywhere in Kenya. Now, high-end schools, people always want to live close to them, and these are wealthy people. So they tend to do well both in good and in bad markets. We just finished and handed over Amara Ridge sometime last year. The demand, all of them are 100% sold, and not only sold, those who bought for investment, we've also rented them out. So first transaction, we sold it to them, 100% sold. For those who bought not to live in them, to rent, we've also rented all of them. So it tells you
like a
that
full service operation here.
Yeah, full service operation, and the buyer is happy because they're now getting the rental yield. On the back of that, then we have more demand for that kind of exclusive product. So we've now released 2 products. One is C2 Village, which is a 30-acre master planned residential community with all kinds of comprehensive amenities. Then we're also releasing an exclusive gated community called Applewood in Miotoni. So on the back of Amara Ridge, we now have 2 products. When we released C2, last Saturday, and actually we did it at the Amara Ridge Clubhouse so that people can actually see this is the kind of delivery that I'm going to be getting. On phase 1, we were able to sell 20% on the day of the release. So it tells that it's working.
That's tremendous in the current market, right? It tells you that people have a lot of confidence in your product. Yeah.
And then Applewood, we are going to release, I think it's December 1. The issue we are having now is that there are clients who are saying, I'm ready, can we talk about pricing now? And you tell them, no, we are going to talk about pricing December 1. So that's the current market. The next market is Kiambu County.
Yeah.
Of the 10 fastest growing towns with a population of 50,000 and above, 6 out of 10 are in Kiambu County. So we have strong, compelling demographics behind us. And in that market, we have around 4 products. All of them are doing well. The only thing that we've done that has changed for us is that instead of, let's say, putting 500 units into the market at a particular time for any of the developments, we are phasing them. So like Alma, we've had to break into phase 1 and phase 2, so that you finish this 200, 250, then you go to the next. So the market has softened. The way we are dealing with it is to phase our project.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I just jump back, to the ratings agency out of South Africa, and can you just tell us how you read that? To me, when I saw it, it seemed to have not been informed by the equity underwriting that had happened subsequently. Is that correct?
That's correct, but let's take a step back. Submitting to a rating by a rating agency is voluntary. So the first thing is that Cytonn voluntarily submit, and these things are not cheap. You pay $25,000 US dollars per rating. So to be able to be consistent with our values of transparency and accountability, in addition to having a board, in addition to having external auditors, Grant Thornton, we submitted to a rating process. Now, they follow the story. They came back and said, I have one issue with your story. You need to equitize the company, essentially.
They said that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to add equity and you need to increase long-term debt. We have increased the long-term debt already by the 2.1 billion from Taaleri. Then we entered into an agreement with Taaleri again to buy 20% of the company. So when this is closed, we obviously expect our ratings to go up. So for us, it was not a big issue. And actually for our investors, it's not. Of course, it is a market where people sometimes compete in unethical ways. So somehow it got into the social media and it was twisted that,
I wanted to ask you about that, because what I saw was it was being promoted on social media, which means people are spending money to push that story.
Yeah,
what is going on?
If you go to Facebook, you'll see that it was sponsored by a certain brand name in the market. It's essentially put in Facebook based on a certain Facebook account, and you could see that it was sponsored. Of course, what we don't know, who in the market would sponsor to actually trash Cytonn's name, but we are used to those kinds of things. I mean, I always remind people, think about our history. First, we were dragged through the courts for a very long time. We actually still in court on certain matters. Then we were accused before professional bodies, CFA, LSK, ISPAC, and we just address those issues one by one, and we just will continue to execute. So having dealt with the legal issues, having dealt with social media, having dealt with the professional bodies and also the regulators, it took us a long time to get our license. It seems the only playing field that is now left is social media, and as you know, social media is not governed. Sometimes you don't even know who is attacking you. But one thing that has not changed, you push back through execution. When people say they have no projects, that's how we started our property bus tour. Every Saturday, we take whoever wants and we walk them around all the projects. Now, you will not hear them saying that Cytonn has no projects. The next thing they'll say, oh, they have not completed. We've completed and handed Amara, and clients are asking for more. So we have C2 and we have Applewood. Alma phase 1, we are handing over December this year, latest January, and next year. I mean, that's 200 units that we are putting into the market. Anybody walking around can see that these developments are progressing. So the only way to push back is to give information that, look, somebody doesn't want us in the market. That's why you see all this information here. But when you peel the onion, there's nothing to what they're saying.
And really, if you look at it, in 5 years, I think, since you started up, I mean, what you've achieved in that 5 years, given all the noise, is quite extraordinary, Edwin. Really.
It takes a team. Remember, behind, I work with a management team of almost, I would say, 20 senior managers, and then the whole firm is around over 500 people, of which 300 are client facing every day. Either they are raising money or they are selling products. So it takes a team. Now, while it looks like we've been around for that 5 years, remember the first 1 year was nothing more than litigation and court fights. The only client that we really had who was a substantive client was Taaleri. Our real estate developments really just started in year 2. So we are now in our 3rd year of development. We've delivered 1. We are almost delivering the 2nd, and then the others are at an advanced stage.
Let me go back to your product. You know, you were talking about how you're delivering 18%. Are you still at 18%, Edwin?
We are still at 18% because the fundamental product that is supporting the 18% is real estate. Real estate market for Kiambu County residential and current residential has not changed. You can still make 23 to 25% per annum. Our model is we have a liability of around 18 if it's 1 year money. Remember, some tenors are short, 3 months, 6 months. Actually, our average cost of funds is 16%.
Yes.
Then on the other side, we are making 23%. We get a spread of 7%. Now, that 7%, that's why we are trying to increase our real estate under development to 100 billion, so that 7% on 100 billion, you have a top line revenue of 7 billion, then you spend some of it in running the place, and hopefully we can drop 30% of it to the bottom line. So for now, we don't see a reason to change the model. However, remember, we now have a regulated subsidiary. We are in the process of setting up funds.
This is the fund management group, Seriani.
Actually, the regulated subsidiary is Cytonn Asset Managers.
Okay.
Now, we have this strange framework where you get a license to be a fund manager. We got Cytonn Asset Manager. Then you have to go through the process of setting up each of the funds. Each of the funds have to be licensed separately. Having gotten the fund management license, we didn't want to go through the process again, spend many months pursuing licenses for the individual products. So we had a partnership with Seriani. We were already distributing products for them. They didn't have a distribution. So we said, why don't we acquire you so that we can then access these funds? That way we don't have to go through the process of a fresh application. So we are at the tail end of the acquisition of those funds. Once that is done, we rebrand them to Cytonn Asset Managers. We can now have a bigger pool of investors. Now, if the inflow of money is more than we can deploy, then naturally it means your rate may have to come down. But exactly how it will play, time will tell, depending on how much inflows come from the regulated funds. However, what has not changed is that the underlying asset can still support 18%. If the rate goes down, it's good for the firm because it just means your margins are better.
Of course, so you widen the margins. And Edwin, your parting comments today?
Still consistent with our story from day one. We might not see it, but we live in a privileged country. You know, in many aspects, when you talk about marathons, we are the leading brand in marathons.
Elliot.
Yeah, if you talk about mobile money,
Yes.
Kenya is the global center of mobile money. I saw the other day Diani came top in the world as the best beach place. You talk about wildlife, Masai Mara, top in the world.
Quest was talking about this.
Quest was talking. I mean, Quest came and spent a whole 1 week here and sampled the various aspects of Nairobi life, whether it's business, whether it's sports, whether it's TV. I mean, how many countries can get somebody of Quest's brand to actually spend 1 week with them? When you talk about Obama's heritage having having heritage back in Kenya. So in so many ways, and the economy is growing, in so many ways, it is a good place to do business. We tend to have only three things that pull us back: corruption, ethnicity, and mediocrity. A good example is, we are competing in the market. We might have a competitor or two who don't like us, but the way to push back is not to trash someone's name. You sit and sort out what the issues are. If any brand that is able to work through corruption, ethnicity, and mediocrity,
and come out on the other side, is going to do well. And that's what Cytonn is about. We are working very hard to deliver for our clients, to deliver for our shareholders, to deliver for our staff. And as long as we continue to do that, the fundamentals of the economy are still very strong, and we just continue to progress the story. Every time you come, we have moved a step further. I've got to say that and give you credit for that, Edwin, because since we've engaged, every time I'm coming, I hear somebody who's making progress. Everybody else is kind of standing still as they keep throwing whatever they're throwing around. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
Well done.
Asante.